Hey guys, if you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts. You probably like music too, I would imagine. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. You don't even need a premium account. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. The good thing is, is on Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, so you don't have to worry about it cutting in and out like I have to when I'm at work. And you can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social platforms like Instagram. Just search for the Really Rich Podcast on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me so you never miss an episode of the Really Rich Podcast. Last but not least, though, Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service. I don't know if you guys knew that. I did not, but it is. And now it can be your go-to for podcasts as well. Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Adam Rich from the Really Rich Podcast. Do you ever get burned out? Like, do you ever feel like quitting what you're doing, whatever it is that you do or you excel in, or maybe it's something you like, a passion, your business, whatever it is? Do you ever get to that point? And I mean, I'm sure most of us do, but like, how do you, I guess more the question is, how do you handle that? When you get to a point where, you know, things aren't going or aren't progressing as fast as you want them to, or it's not looking promising, or you're getting a lot of, you know, hateful things coming your way, a lot of haters talking about you, telling you won't succeed. But does things look kind of bleak for you and make you want to quit? Because I got an interesting take on this, in my opinion, I guess, but this is how I kind of keep myself motivated when it comes to things like that. Of course, I feel the same thing. I'm sure I feel exactly the same way as you guys may do about not wanting to keep going if things aren't progressing fast enough. I've ran into this myself with my podcast. I've ran into it with a job that I've had where I was trying to get promotions, and then it's like when you don't get them, you really just want to quit or give up or just stop trying to even work at it and all this. But there's a thing when it's harder when you work for somebody and it's not like a thing that's you're passionate about. It's very difficult to keep motivation and keep going, keep plugging along, because it's not even really your thing. It's not really your love. It's not a thing that you're striving to be phenomenal at or anything, right? I mean, you may want to be good at your job. You may want to take your shit seriously, but I found this is very, very important when it comes to something you really do like, something you really, maybe it's a new business that you started, or maybe it's just a hobby, something fun you want to do, or just something you want to pick up. Maybe it's a new craft that you want to learn. And if you're not seeing significant, even working out, I'm sure a ton of you guys can relate with this. I know I have personally, that when it comes to working out, if your gains aren't quick enough, if you don't feel like you look good enough, or you lose enough weight, or you're showing enough definition or anything, if you don't get that quick enough, it's very easy to want to give up. And I've fought this my entire effing life. But I've learned something. This is what's absolutely critically important, and it's somewhat of a cliche, I guess, but it is so fucking true, and I can't stress this enough. When you get to a point when things aren't looking good, or you're hearing a lot of negativity, you're hearing a lot of discouraging comments, or seeing a lot of discouraging signs that are making you want to stop doing it, or maybe take a break, or maybe slow down or anything, you think about, there's a couple things, but think about this more importantly. Why did you start in the first place? What is it that drove you to even want to start? Like, if it's just a hobby that you were curious about, it's real easy to just, realize, like, if it's something you've never done and you're like, maybe I should check this out. And then you try it and it's not really all that, it's not really your love, or you don't really like it as much as you thought you would. That's different. That is a totally different story. That's something that isn't really your love or your passion or something that you care about dramatically. But when it's something that you desperately want to happen, something you've always been like, that you've loved, or always something that you've wanted to do, and maybe now you've started, but it's just not going the way you wanted, the biggest thing you can do is think to yourself, why did I start in the first place? What is it about this that made me want to start? And I think for most of us, I think a lot of us, if it's something that you're really passionate about, if it's a new career path, if it's a new business that you wanted to start, if it's a new, even if it's just a new hobby that you wanted to pick up or go to the gym, maybe you're like really wanted maybe you're a little heavier than you wanted to be and you really want to lose some weight, or maybe you just want to get healthier. Maybe it's not that you're out of shape necessarily, but you just want to eat healthier and exercise and keep your body, fresh and everything and tight, and that. It's easy to get burned out, or like maybe you go too much, maybe you're overdoing it, or you're going and you're just not seeing the results that you want to see, right? It's so easy for us to give up. It's so easy for one negative motherfucker to just come up to you and be like, "Oh, you're never going to do this. You're never going to be anything. It's not, well, you've been doing this for a while and it's not going anywhere. I don't even know why you waste your time." I couldn't even tell you how many times I've heard that just about my podcast. Not even the gym. I mean, I'll get into my own head when it comes to the gym and I'll be like, well, do I really want to invest this kind of time and effort into something that I'm not even really like that interested in? And I should be. I'm not, and I'm certainly not knocking anybody. If you're interested in the gym, if you go to the gym all the time, if you love the gym, that's fucking awesome. I wish that I had that drive. I really do, because I know it's extremely important to exercise and work on your body and eat the right things and just basically try to live healthy. I know that that's important. And it's just hard for me because I don't value the gym as much as I should. And that's on me. That's not on anybody else. It's not the gym's fault. It's not your fault. It's purely all up in my shit. It's all in my head. It's 100% on me. I know that. But it's so hard for me because it's not something I'm passionate about. And it's so easy to fall out of love with doing something if you don't love it. But it's also very easy to fall out of love with doing something that you do love. That's the crazy thing. People don't look at it like that. People don't think that. They're like, well, if you love it, why would you ever get burned out? Dude, not to sound like a creep, but if you're having sex nonstop all day, every day, you're going to get sick of it at some point. There's only so much, I get, even no matter how pleasurable something is, no matter how happy something makes you, everything needs to be done in moderation to be able to appreciate it, and two, to keep yourself from burning out. It's so important. I could not stress that enough. It is so important to balance what you're doing, how you're doing it, and always remember why you started. Always remember why you started in the first place. When I started my podcast, I'll come out with it. When I started my podcast, the biggest thing that I wanted was I've always loved talking to people. I've always loved communicating with people. I've always loved sharing information. And it's not that I know how that comes off. I know how it sounds. It sounds like, oh, you think you know everything, so you want to teach everyone something. And that has nothing to do with it. That's not at all what I'm getting at. What it is that when I was growing up, I always put a lot of value on knowledge. I always have. My dad is always been one of the biggest influences or like role models or motivations in my life. I've always wanted. I seen how brilliant he is. And the wisdom that comes off of him, and he was just a worker at GM. He wasn't some big philosopher. He wasn't a professor. He wasn't a scientist. He wasn't a doctor, and he's still none of those things. But what he did do, and he's always done this, he still does to this day, is he's always studied people. He's always studied. He's always had a huge infatuation with reading. He's always wanted to learn more. He grew up in a very poor home, and all he had was knowledge, was books. That's all he had. He had his physical health just because they didn't really ever eat much, so he was always in good shape back then. But the point is, he always loved to expand his mind. It was something you could do no matter how poor you are. You can always expand your mind. And that was back in the days with zero internet. You had to go to the fucking library. You had to take a book home with you. You had to hope one of your friends may have had a book that you wanted to read and then borrow it from them. Any number of ways. But the love of knowledge has always been something that he had in him, and it's in me. It's always been. And I hated school. That was the shitty thing. I hated school. I always hated school. I still hate school. But it was because of the format. It wasn't because of the learning. I've always wanted to know more and more and more and more. I've always looked at and studying people. It's never paid me to do shit with studying people, but I've loved it. I've always loved it. And I just always want to know why does the world work the way it is? Why is it the way it is? Why is it here the way it is? Why are we here? Why are we like the way we are? Why is this person who's born in the exact same town, goes to the same school as me, just have a completely different mindset than I do? I've been intrigued by that stuff my entire life. And so I've always loved just learning and then sharing what I've learned with others. Not in an arrogant asshole way, not in a I know this and you don't type of way, but just in a, man, I'm so grateful to know something or to learn something that I just can't wait to share that with somebody else. And I love it. I've always loved it. And that is 100% why I started my podcast, because this was finally a chance for me to branch out and work with other people, communicate with everyone all over social media, all through. I can interview people and just pick their brains, man. That is so important to me. It always has been. But there are so many times that I've been like, man, this podcast it's just not happening. It's just nothing's going in my favor. Every time I want to try something a little bit new or something that may help me, I run into a fucking hurdle or some kind of a speed bump that just screws me here. And there's so many times, I could not begin to tell you how many times that I've wanted to just give up. And it's very frustrating, obviously. It's a very frustrating feeling when you're trying to, not only when you're trying to do something that you love, but when you're also trying to be super good at it, when you want to, I mean, think about how depressing or how frustrating this can be for a guy who really wants to communicate and share information, and then you can't get any listeners. You know what I mean? It's like you go through all these like self-doubt things about, man, is what I'm saying even valuable? Does anyone even give a fuck? Are they listening to it? Am I the problem? Am I not relaying the message in a good way? Am I wrong? You know, like you go through all these different forms of self-doubt. And then you start hearing from other people, like when you try to get your friends and your family to be involved, when you try to be like, hey, you should really check out this, my podcast, I did this. And then nobody gives a fuck. Nobody cares. And it's like, without even listening to it. And then here's the real rub. They always want to listen to like your first or second or third episodes, right? Your early ones, the ones that start. They want to start at the beginning. Well, those are your shittiest ones. For me, it is, for sure. If you go back right now and listen to any of my first few episodes, one, you're going to hear how dramatically different the format kind of starts. Like the way I start it, the way I talk, I'm just not comfortable because it's new to me. Like I've always loved talking to people and sharing information and being around people and just, that whole thing. I've never really been big on the, like walking into a room and demanding everyone focuses on me. I've never been that like self-absorbed. I've always wanted to share information, but I've never wanted to be disrespectful about it. I never wanted to walk into a room and be like, hey, I'm here now. It's my turn to talk. You guys listen to me. I've never liked that. I've always hated people that do that. Or not hate them, but I just hate that quality, hate that trait. But it's very difficult, man, when you deal with this. And there's so many fucking times that I've thought to myself, I should just quit, man. Nobody's, I don't know if anyone gives a shit. Why am I spending all this time and effort into doing this for nothing? Like it feels like nobody gives a shit. And dude, it can really fuck your psyche up if you let it. But there's a big key element that you have to look forward to when you do this. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? Well, the answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. When I started using Anchor to do my podcast, it was so extremely easy that I haven't even bothered to look for another app to use. I love this app. It's the only one I deal with, the only one I even recommend, period. I recommend you get on there ASAP. If you want to start a podcast, this is definitely the place to go. It's easy. You can drive around and record. You can sit in your basement and record. You can do it anywhere. It's fantastic. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start, anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Always remembering why you started doing something in the first place is, in my opinion, the best way to go, the biggest influencing motivational factor into keeping you going when shit's rough. Because if you're having a tough time, if every time something got a little tough, you gave up, think of how many things you would have never done. Think of how many times you've accomplished something great because you purely just didn't give up. You just didn't stop. You kept going, no matter how pissed off it got you, no matter how miserable you felt, no matter how how many times you felt frustrated and lost and hopeless. But you fought through it anyway, and you did it. And once you accomplish that, listen, this is the biggest part. When you've gone through that part of it, when you've gone through the fact of everything sucks, I'm getting shit talked about me constantly, all my friends think I suck, they think I can't do it, it's why am I wasting my time? When you've gone through that kind of just depression and anger towards you're like what it is you're doing, or you've gone through that kind of negative feedback or that kind of hate mail coming your way, when you've listened to, when you've gone through the gauntlet of all this shit that just makes you discouraged and makes you want to give up, and then you succeed, oh my God, it's such a good feeling. It's so good. It is so awesome. And I know that you guys know that something has happened to you in your life, something you know that you've gone through that you can relate to has happened in your life to where you're like, man, I'm so glad I just didn't give up right here. And that's exactly how I've been feeling with this podcast. It's how I felt anytime I've accomplished or got good at something, anything. Anytime I've had struggle defeating something and then I finally do, dude, it's so amazing, man. And I just encourage every one of you to dig deep and think about these things. Think about, no matter what kind of a funk you're going through, no matter what kind of heat is coming your way, no matter what anybody says about you, to you, about what you're trying to accomplish, I don't care if it's your spouse, if it's your mom and dad, if it's your children, I don't care if it's your best friend of 1,000 years. If that person tells you, look, man, I know you, look, I know you like doing this, but it's just, it's just not happening. It's just not panning out. Maybe you should look at other options. You can be nice, be nice to the person and understanding, but in your head, fuck that person. Forget that shit. It does not matter what their opinion is or of your success level or what the likelihood is that you succeed. Fuck that. It does not matter what the likelihood is. Listen, every single week, there's a likelihood of a very minute, tiny fraction of a likelihood that you're going to win the lottery. And guess what? Every week, somebody wins a fucking lottery. Almost every week. Sometimes it goes a couple weeks, whatever. But dude, the lotteries get won all the time. And you know what the odds are of winning? I don't know what the fuck they are. I know they're not good. I know you have a better likelihood of getting struck by lightning. And dude, listen, I don't ever want to get struck by lightning, but when I was younger, I used to try. I used to look for that shit because I was like, man, there's all that lightning. Let's get close to it. Just see what it's like. And it never happened. So listen, I don't ever want to be struck by lightning now that I'm not that stupid. But when I was younger, I just thought the idea of man, it just, look how cool it looks and it's so far away. I just want to get as close as possible. Or I used to want to be as close as possible to a tornado, but I wouldn't want to get hit by one. But if the likelihood of these things happening has zero to do with whether or not you should attempt to try. And it's unbelievable how many, and this is another thing. This is one of the other big elements that I want you guys, I desperately need you to hear this, is that if you think about this, think about how many people do give up when shit gets rough. This is the biggest fucking thing. If you don't hear nothing I say except this is the most important. You feel like giving up, so does every motherfucker out there. Everybody has gone through something where they feel like giving up. Everybody does. And you know what the killer is? Most people do give up. If you don't give up, you are that much more likely to be the one that succeeds. That's what's fucking wild to me, dude. That is so incredible to me, because when I learned that part of the story, when I learned that I know you want to give up. Most people do want to give up, or everybody wants to give up. Most people do give up. I would say 99 people out of 100 give up. And you know what that leaves you? You're the 1 out of 100 that will succeed if you just don't give up. And then if you don't give up, you're going to continually get better at whatever it is that you're doing, because the more you try anything, the better you get at it. That's how people get good at literally anything ever on earth, is they keep practicing and practicing and practicing until they're fucking incredible. Think about, and then, and I have another good little outlook about this, is that not only are you 100 times more plausible to succeed if you're the one person that gives up out of 100, or the one person that doesn't give up, I'm sorry. If you're the one person that does not give up, and you just keep going no matter how hard or how difficult or frustrating or depressing it can be, stop letting these things look like failures. They're not failures if you don't give up. It's only a failure when you finally give up. Like, because I talked to this guy, and he said, about, the losses hurt. I take these losses and they hurt. But here's the reality. They're not losses. They're lessons. They're only losses when you give up, when you stop, when you don't try anymore. When the attempts stop, that's when you fail. But as long as you keep going and going and going, you're not losing, you're getting lessons. And that's how we learn. That's how we get better. Like, you got to look at every quote unquote loss as a lesson you've just learned. What did I do? It didn't work out good at all. Don't do that again. Or do it somehow differently. That's the biggest key. You got to look at, first off, you need to have this positive attitude of there is no such thing as failure or loss. There is no real negativity coming my way. It's just people's opinions. And the opinions don't determine my outcome. Your opinion of me will never determine my success. And my opinion of you will never determine your success. You giving up will determine your failure. For sure it will. You trying over and over and over, fighting off the bullshit. You know what? Here's what I actually love the most is I don't like getting losses, okay? I don't know of anyone that loves loss. I mean, people say it. I've heard like Gary Vee say, I love getting losses. No, you don't. I mean, you learn something, and that's good, and you should look at it in a positive way. But nobody loves to lose. I mean, you could say that I look at losing in a positive way, so therefore it's not really a loss, and I don't mind that. That's one thing. But to say I love losing, nobody loves losing. But the reality is this, you're not losing. That's the best part. Anytime you take a quote-unquote loss, or what you consider to be a loss, it's actually sharpening your weaponry, dude. And people don't look at it like that. And I look at it in the simple fact of every time something feels like, man, that didn't work out good. That didn't go the way I wanted. Okay, well, now I know what, not to do or what to change going forward. And I've gotten that one out of the way. But this is only going to make me better, dude. Think about it like this. Every athlete, let's say you're a basketball player and you're taking jump shots. You know how many fucking shots you're going to miss before you start making more than you miss? You're going to miss so many more. In your life, you're going to miss so many more shots than the ones you're going to make. Even baseball players, the best baseball players of all time are batting around 400. Do you know what that means when you're batting around 400? It's out of 1,000. So you know what that means? That means 4 out of every 10 attempts. This is the best baseball players ever get around 4 out of 10. That means the best players ever miss more than they hit. Do you understand that? Like, when you look at that, the greatest ever to do it miss more often than they make. That's like, it's not discouraging when you have the right attitude, when you have the right mindset, when you know how to take these things. When you take it on the chin, that strengthens your chin. When you take these quote unquote losses, it's making you better because you know but you got to evaluate. That's the thing. When you take a loss, the only way I guess it's quote unquote taking a loss is if you don't ever analyze it. You don't ever think about what it was that cost you, and you just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. When you take them as lessons, and you pick them apart and you analyze them and you try to learn from them, they're not losses anymore. They're lessons. And every lesson is a good one. I mean, yes, you may suffer more, you may feel more heartache or loss or depression or sadness or whatever with certain ones or whatever. But my point is, you need to look at it as, I'm going forward. I'm moving. I'm getting better now. Because that's a fuck up that I won't make again. And that makes you better. And that's the only way we get better ever at anything in life, period. And nobody's opinion of your success or failure, quote unquote, ever fucking matters. It doesn't matter. Listen, here's the reality. Who is the most, I can't remember who in the world right now has the most Twitter followers or the most Instagram followers. Like, I want to say it's maybe Kylie Jenner or maybe somebody, one of the Kardashians or whatever, or, I can't remember who it is, but regardless who it is, right? The best they got is maybe a couple 100 million followers, which is a shitload. We all know that. That's a ton, right? Like 100 million. Even if it's 100 million, I think it's more than that, but say it's 100 million. 100 million followers. Do you know how many people there are in the world? There's around 7 billion. If you think about it like this, if you had 1 billion followers, which nobody's even remotely close to that, but say you had 1 billion followers, you know what that actually means? That means that 1 out of 7 people like you. 1 out of 7 people are willing to follow you. That means the other 6 out of 7 don't give a fuck about you. And when you look at it like that, you can look at it in a negative way and say, well, 6 out of 7 people don't like me. That sucks. Yeah, you can look at that. And that's not a good way to look at it. Because the most popular person, the person with the most followers, still has way more people that don't follow them. You're never going to make everybody happy. You're never going to have 7 billion followers. You're never going to have 7 billion compliments from, one compliment each person. You're never going to have everyone like you. So who gives a fuck what they say about you, what they think about you, what they think about your failure or success rate, or what kind of job you're doing? None of that matters. Think about why you're doing what you're doing. If you genuinely love it and you genuinely like what you're doing, keep doing it, regardless of the quote unquote losses that you take or the failures that you take. They're lessons. Learn from them. Not everyone's going to approve. Not everyone's going to care. Not everyone's going to be there to support you. In fact, most cases, nobody's going to be there to support you. You got to support yourself. Get your head on straight. Think about the goal. Think about what you're trying to accomplish. Any athlete in the world, any athlete, let's take the earliest I know of really getting drafted is basically hockey, baseball, maybe basketball. That's the earliest you can get. And that means you got to be around 18, 19 years old minimum to even play to even get paid to play, right? Professional. You know when they started playing? Probably around the age of 4, 5, 6 years old. We'll even say at the very latest 8, just to make it easy. We'll say at the very latest, these guys that are getting paid to be athletes probably started at the latest when they were 8 years old. They didn't get paid until they were 18. Minimum. Now, you're talking best case scenario. I'm talking a guy that waited till he was, a guy or girl, sorry, I don't mean to exclude the women, a man or a woman, or a boy or a girl plays a sport, practices day after day after day. They go to school, they do all their schoolwork, they do all their homework, then when they get a little bit older, like 14, 15, 16, they get jobs, so they're doing schoolwork, they're doing jobs, then they're going to practice they practice their fucking faces off over and over and over and over and play game after game and practice after practice and season after season for a decade minimum. For a fucking decade. Think about that. The oldest start is around 8 years old, and that's if you make it when you're 18. Most people do it a lot longer than that. Most people start when they're around 5 and don't get drafted till they're 20 or 21 or 23. Some people are doing this shit for 15 to 20 years, unpaid practice, day after day after day after day, not getting paid. Think of that kind of grind for at minimum a decade, possibly 2 decades. Some people work their whole damn lives and then they finally hit it big when they're like 40, 50, 60 years old. Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, he wasn't rich until he was like in his 40s. And so my point is, you can grind. Elon Musk worked his ass off, spent every dime he could to keep his businesses going. He lived at his office. There's interviews about it. He's talked about this. He had a little cot that he set up where he could stay the night at his office so he could wake up, work till he went to bed. He wasn't making shit. My point is, so many people on earth who are the best of the best have worked tirelessly, hour after hour, day after day, week, month, year, decades, until they finally got a little bit of payoff for all their decades of hard work, their years and potentially decades of hard work. Don't let a couple of fucking failures put you off track. Don't let a couple of negative remarks or negative comments on Twitter or Instagram or the lack of subscribers or the fact that your friends don't want to listen to your podcast or any of that shit. Don't let any family member, any friend, any stranger especially tell you or I should say persuade you to either go or stop. You should not hear the compliments and you should not hear the insults. It's nice to hear the compliments. It's shitty to hear the insults. But ultimately, neither one of them fucking matter at all. Your opinion, your decision, your drive, your passion, your motivation is what's going to keep you going and make you successful. And let's be honest, success is only determined by you. My definition of success may not be your definition. So don't worry about what anyone else considers to be successful. Doesn't fucking matter. Too many times we listen to other people's opinions or their attitudes or their ideas or that. This is your life. You do what makes you happy. You do what you're passionate about, and remember why the fuck you started. That's the number one thing. Don't listen to anybody else. Keep your shit together and keep going. When you don't want to do it, make yourself do it. Even if it's a shit. Listen, if you're, say, a podcaster, because this is kind of where I'm, just what I'm thinking. This episode right now that I'm making could be the shittiest episode I've ever made. It ain't gonna stop me. If I get one person to listen, if only one person listens and then they respond back and go, "Hey, you suck," I don't care. Then okay, then I guess don't do this way again. I'll get better. I know I'm going to get better because I have a tireless drive to keep getting better at everything I've ever done. I've always had a tireless drive to be better and better and better. I don't believe I am the best. I believe I'm on my way. I always believe I'm on my way. I'm never a finished product. And listen, I don't say that with an arrogance. I say that because that's a mindset. You need to always feel like you're on the pursuit of perfection. I know I will never be perfect, but you know what my number one goal is? To become perfect. Knowing it's never going to happen. Because when you if you set your goals at a ridiculously high level, then even if you fall a little bit short, it's still fucking amazing. It's incredible. I'm saying set your goals at an unbelievably high, unattainable, like no possibility of achieving what you think can happen. And then strive for it anyway. Keep working at it anyway. Because chances are you're not going to hit that mark, but you're still going to, even if you settle for a little bit less, it's going to be fucking amazing and incredible. And you're going to look back and you're going to be like, damn, I'm so glad I didn't give up. I'm so glad that when those times were rough, I said, fuck those tough times, and I pushed right through it. You think the times are tough? You need to be tougher. Mentally, physically, emotionally, in anything that you do. Strive to be the best, and even listen, if you strive to be the number one of all time and you accidentally land in the top 10, that's not a fucking fail. You're top 10 all time. Like, people will remember that. And even if they don't, you ain't doing it for that. You're doing it because you love it. That's the thing, is if you're doing what you love, you're going to get burned out. You're going to want to take breaks. And I encourage that. I encourage recharging the battery sometimes. You know, maybe if you do a podcast every other day, maybe take one of those days off. Maybe take a week off. Freshen the batteries. Go on vacation. I do this all the time. On weekends, I'm barely ever active on anything. I don't ever podcast on the week. I rarely podcast on the weekend. I might do an interview or two here and there, but I'm never doing my own shit because I spend time with my family. I put my family first. I make sure on the weekends there's no work. I mean, I might do work like around the house and stuff like that, but I don't work on my business or my career or anything like that. I don't do shit like that because you need to have mental breaks. And secondly, the biggest thing, don't listen to other people. It's nice hearing compliments. We love compliments. But if my best friend came up and was like, dude, I listened to that last podcast, that was badass, I would be like, man, thanks, that's awesome, dude, I appreciate it. But in my head, I'm like, all right, whatever. That's cool. I do appreciate it. Like, I really do appreciate it. But don't get high on your own supply. When people tell you you're awesome, fuck that noise. Don't listen to it. Strive to be better than awesome. You know, accept the compliments. I'm not saying like ignore them or be like, hey, dude, I don't want to hear that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is just don't get high. Like, don't let your ego go unchecked. Don't let it get out of hand because you got people come. You know how many times people like Gary Vee or like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, you know how many times people will run up to these people and go, dude, you're the best. I can't, but man, you changed my life. And they probably get sick of hearing how awesome they are. But they don't let it stop them from their work ethic. They keep trying to get better and better and better and better. That's what you need to do. Don't get high on your own supply. Don't get low on other people's bullshit. It doesn't matter. Confidence comes from within. It doesn't come from other people telling you how great you are. Listen, you can't ever become great because of other people telling you how great you are. By definition, if you ain't great yet, then you can't be so great while you're trying to become great. You know, you're on your way to become great, but once you're already great and then people are telling you how awesome you are, you know how shitty you have been. You know how hard it was to get there. You know that listen, we all start at zero. Followers, your job, like everyone has a first day. Everybody does, no matter what it is you do. And it's so important to just not let your ego go unchecked because things are going good. And it's so important not to let your self-esteem just start lowering and dropping just because you have a couple of bad episodes or a couple of bad days at work, a couple of bad guitar lessons, a couple of bad whatever the fuck you do. Maybe you own a restaurant. Maybe you had maybe you had a bad day where business wasn't coming in and you actually spent way more money than you made that day. That shit happens. But don't let that spiral you out of control to where you start doing irrational things to try to compensate, because then you're sacrificing who you are and what you love to do just to try to play catch up. And you're running your own race. There is no such thing as catch up. You don't catch up to other people when you're in your own fucking solo race. I'm doing me. I'm doing my own thing I'm trying to inspire others and motivate and be good for other people. But it's because I love it. It's because I want to do that. If I had a couple people tell me like, hey man, I listened to your podcast, it sucked, you didn't help me at all, you made shit worse, I would literally feel terrible that I made things worse for them. But it certainly wouldn't stop me from podcasting. I would just try to figure out, well, shit, what did I do to fuck them up? Because I didn't want to do, that's not my goal. I want to do everything I can to help people. Maybe I did the wrong thing. I don't ever want to say something that's going to make somebody's life go the opposite direction in a bad way. I don't want that. But if I did it, it sure as fuck wouldn't stop me. It would just mean that I need to get better. And I'm okay with that. You should be too. You're doing fine. Everyone has setbacks. Everyone has quote unquote failures or losses. Use them as lessons. Do not count them as losses. There's a W column and an L column. One stands for win, the other one stands for lesson. It's okay to chalk up a shitload of lessons, because eventually your win column is going to be flooded and that L column is going to look pretty damn slim. It's going to happen. But only if you don't give up. Keep it going, guys. I love you and thank you for this time. Listen, if you guys want to get a hold of me, on Instagram, it's Really Rich Podcast. On Twitter, it's Really Rich Adam. Snapchat, Really Rich. LinkedIn is Adam Rich. You can leave me voice messages through the Anchor app like this. Oh, and by the way, everyone, if you, if you would rather listen, like I just now got signed up to where my podcast is going to be also on Overcast and Castbox. So if you happen to love listening on there and you haven't been able to, or if you love listening to those platforms, those apps, and you just haven't been able to listen to mine or whatever, I'm now on there too, so you can find me on there. It's awesome. I'm trying to get on iHeartRadio. It's pending, so we'll see how that goes. Wish me luck, people. And even if you don't, I don't need it. No, no, I'm just fucking around. But I love you guys for real. I mean that. I love you guys. I thank you so much for listening, and I'm grateful to have you in my life, and I'm grateful to be a part of yours. I'll talk to you soon, guys, all right? Peace! I'm out of here.